Okay, and then just whenever you're going to let people in, to give me a little heads up, I'm just doing a quick last minute couple of things here. I see it's 10:01, so we can probably.
Folks are already in, Ashley.
Oh, they're in.
Yep, they're already in.
Oh, I see them.
Yep,
Oh,
we ended
sorry.
the practice session.
Great, awesome. All right, hey everyone, welcome. All right, I see that we have Aziza joining us, hopefully with your class. Caroline's here, Karen, Elizabeth, Erica's here. Great. So as you are joining us, we are going to, Carrie, if you want to go to the next slide, we would love to just, as we get started here, hear from you all in the chat box. And so while you're waiting, and if you're a teacher that has a class, let us know that. And just put your name, your school, and where you're joining from. So we know that we have folks here in the room that are from both Vermont and New York. So go ahead and put that in the chat. We want to see who is here. If you're joining us on Zoom, if you're joining the live stream, you can use the Zoom chat box. We have someone moderating that as well. And so you'll be able to put your information in there, and we'll make sure we'll read that aloud so folks in the Zoom room here know what is going on. So we've got 7th graders from Boquet Valley in Elizabethtown, New York. Awesome. Thanks for joining us. We've got, Champlain Elementary. Is it Matina's class from Burlington, Vermont? Awesome. I believe Miss Matina's class. We also have your submission that we'll be talking about today. Miss Malik's class from Champlain Elementary. Amazing. Wonderful. Caroline's joining us from Lake Champlain Sea Grant. We've got 4th graders from Miss Malik's class. Amazing. I loved your submission. I saw the Champlain, all the Champlain submissions came in. They were amazing. Karen from Southern Maine, Wells Reserve. Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Elizabeth in East Barnard. Oh, awesome. Learned about this through Shelburne Farms. Great. Amy Demarest is joining us. Wonderful. Great. Welcome, everyone. So one thing we're going to do, we're waiting for a couple more folks here. I want to know, what does water mean to you? So the theme of World Water Day this year was valuing water and thinking about all the ways that we use water and how important water is for all of us here on planet Earth. And so what does water mean to you? If you had to say it in a word or a couple words, what does it mean? And so I'll start. I think when I think about water and the value of water, to me, water means that it is sustenance for things on the planet, whether you're a plant, an animal, all of those things. So what do you think? We'd love to hear from you back in your classrooms. Fun in the outdoors, insecurity, having clean water to drink. Yeah, having clean water to drink is incredibly important. Water is life. Connection, life. Yeah. And so I think it's so funny, all of these things you're saying, these were so evident in the work that you all submitted for your World Water Day submissions. They were really, that was very front and center. What I learned from Standing Rock, water is life. Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. Swimming, life. Yeah. All right. So we are going to get started for today's something to drink, something that is beautiful, something that is fun. I love that. Yeah, that is so true. So we're going to dive in and start our celebration for today. So let's go to our next slide. Great. So welcome, everyone. My name is Ashley Eaton. I use she, her pronouns, and I work at Lake Champlain Sea Grant at the University of Vermont. And to begin our session today, we want to spend just a moment to acknowledge the land that we are on. The land that we are on has a history of both people and nature and the environment. And so the images that are on the screen here, this is a really cool, I'm going to put the link to this in the chat box so that you all can explore this at home or with your teachers, but this is the Native Land app. And so what this does is it allows you to see, you can kind of, this is the, you can see this kind of like a North America view here. You can see like Alaska up here, the continental United States down here. And so this shows folks from Canada have spent a lot of time figuring out and mapping traditional native lands. And so we can figure out and acknowledge basically part of our history together. And so I wanted to explore today for us, since we're focused on the Lake Champlain Basin, what were the first people of this area of the Lake Champlain Basin? And so if you look at this little graph over here to the right, you'll see that this is Lake Champlain in the middle. Maybe Carrie, if you want to point that out to folks. Yeah, so Lake Champlain is in the middle there. And you'll see these kind of colorful little shaded areas. And those are denoting different native groups that were inhabiting this area early on. So you'll see that we have the Abenaki kind of on the Vermont side. We have the Mohawk on the New York side. And then to the South Lake region, we have the Mohican. And so this is a cool tool that I encourage you all to explore to learn a little bit more about the first people of this area here in the Lake Champlain Basin. All right, and so next we are going to turn things over to Colleen from the Lake Champlain Basin Program. And we can give Colleen a nice virtual round of applause because she is the person kind of who brings this event together for us every year to celebrate water. And so Colleen, if you want to walk folks through, what are we going to do today?
Sure, Ashley. So I'm Colleen with the Lake Champlain Basin Program. Thanks everyone for coming. It's a different setup for us. Usually we have your artwork all in a big hall, but now we have it on the web and you can share it with the whole world at the end of today. You can send links to your parents and grandparents. So we wanted to just tell you who the partners are for who we work with for the Champlain Basin Education Initiative. We sponsor World Water Day, which, by the way, some of you might know that World Water Day was first organized by the United Nations more than 10 years ago. They always celebrate it on March 22nd, and we try to celebrate our World Water Day celebration for the Lake Champlain region that very same week, so the week of March 22nd. We'll be doing it again in 2022, so you can start thinking about your projects then. So we'll talk about our partners. We've just done the land acknowledgement. We're going to take a quick look at some of the submissions. We'll listen to a presentation from Neil, which will be very cool. A little question and answer period, and then the big news, the awards for the day. So thank you, Ashley. So if we want to just take a look, I bet most of you have worked with at least one of these groups. So we have the Community Sailing Center on the Burlington waterfront. You've met Ashley from Lake Champlain Sea Grant, right? Okay. And then Elizabeth Lee, can you give a little wave from your hand? Elizabeth works for the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum. You might have gone there on site or seen their rowing boats on Lake Champlain. Amy Demarest from Our Curriculum Matters. Can you give us a wave? Thank you. And Carrie from Shelburne Farms. Great. And Lori, I don't think you're on from the Lake Champlain Committee, but many of you have also worked with Lori Fisher. And of course, Ashley is with Lake Champlain Sea Grant. And she works with Caroline and Nate. So if you're in New York, you might have worked with Nate. And if you're in Vermont, you might have worked with Caroline out in the field collecting macroinvertebrates. So together we work to help teachers and students learn about Lake Champlain. So if you haven't checked us out yet, please do so. And I should also give a shout out to Steph Larkin. Can you wave your hand too, Steph? Stephanie does some of the programming for the Lake Champlain Basin program. Okay, great, thank you.
Awesome, and then one other cool resource, so we thought about sharing it here with you today, but we just didn't have enough time. NEBY, Abenaki Ways of Knowing Water, is a film that reflects on the creation of Lake Champlain, and it is told by folks from the Abenaki tribe, and it is a really cool video. It's about 10 minutes, so it's pretty short, but we just wanted to share the link with you all because we thought you might be interested in that. So I'll pop the link to that video in the chat, and then I will turn it back over. Let's see, I think, Carrie, am I turning it back over to you? Oh, nope, back to Colleen for submissions. How could I forget? All right, here's the list of submissions, and Colleen is going to do a quick overview of all the awesome stuff that came in.
Yep, that's right, Ashley. We actually had 5 schools participating. 2 in New York and 3 in Vermont, but a total of, I don't know, you can count them while I talk. I think there might be 22 classrooms. Every single classroom in Champlain Elementary participated this year. I think that's the first time that's ever happened for us. So that's really cool. And Champlain Elementary, you should know that we've been working with some of your teachers, including Miss Matina and Aziza as well, Miss Malik. So they have been participating in our teacher training, and they, like some of the other teachers present today, are just really, really enthusiastic about teaching about Lake Champlain. Keene Central School, I believe, is not missing today either. They are set up to listen to us by YouTube. So Miss McCormick, Miss Jika, and Miss Megan Welford as well. Very important partners in the CBI initiative, and they really help to help the students in the Adirondacks learn a lot about the lake, and they focus a lot on the Boquet River and a little bit on the Sable as well. And then we have Miss Lower's class from Boquet Valley. You're in it this year, and you're doing a great job with raising salmon in the classroom, and your entries about water and what it means to you were really cool. Hunt Middle School, Miss Orlando's class learned about green stormwater infrastructure, and they will eventually be building a rain barrel on site. And Camel's Hump Middle School, Miss Ferry's class sits up in Richmond near Camel's Hump, and they did a beautiful rain garden with their 6th grade students, and you'll be able to look at some of the work they did on the photos online as well. Champlain Elementary used, I just want to give a shout out there because they used this new huge map that many of you haven't even seen yet, but it's gymnasium size, and you walk on it with your sock feet. And every one of those students over in Champlain Elementary has been walking on it with their sock feet. And I think one of the next schools to be using that for a couple of weeks might be Keene Central School over in the Adirondacks. And this is a map that was created by Elizabeth Lee from the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum, and it's a really cool product that a bunch of you will be using. So thank you so much for your student submissions. They are fantastic, and they cover a variety of topics. And I think, Ashley, we have a little bit of a resource shout out for them for the artwork that's been presented next, right?
I think so. Yeah, you'll see, Carrie, if you want to go to the next slide, you'll see that we did try to include folks' artwork throughout the presentation, but we just pulled out a few cool photos to share with you all. There is a link to the virtual gallery, so make sure that you check out the all of the other school submissions. We had cool, so we had stuff coming in video format. We had stuff coming in pictures. As you can see, we had artwork. People were writing letters to senators. So we had quite a diversity of submissions this year. And so make sure you check out the other work. And it's, you know, we've got tree planting. It was quite a gamut. And it was so interesting to read some of the written work that you all submitted in your PowerPoints and in the presentations about, you know, what doing this project meant to you and some of the things that you learned. So thanks so much for sharing that with us. We love seeing it, and we loved going through it, especially in a time when we can't be together and be with you all in a way that maybe we're more used to. So I'll turn it over. Carrie is just gonna run the next couple of slides here and get our presenter set up for our kind of talk today.
Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, I'm so honored to welcome Neil Patterson. We're so lucky to hear from him today. Really excited. He helps direct the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment with Robin Wall Kimmerer over in New York. And you can check out the link to their program there. Neil's also at SUNY in New York, and he's going to say a little bit more about himself and then talk with us about the value of water and how water is life today. So in just a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Neil. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and he's going to put up some of his slides as well. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Neil.
Thank you, Carrie and Ashley and everyone working on these projects. It's very inspiring to hear of all the work you folks are putting in protecting our precious source of life, our spiritual source of life. And I'd like to share a little bit with you today about that. So thanks for the acknowledgement to our ancestors and our continuing communities and our ongoing relationships with place that you all live in today. My name is Neil Patterson Jr., and I want to begin by introducing myself in my own language. To begin with greetings from the people of the Haudenosaunee. So if you were to run into me on the street, or perhaps your ancestors ran into my ancestors, here's what you would hear. We would say, "Chwan oskanaha, gyatha degwadia, disna woknana, skaruda, ekwahewa gayadakra, disna egisaseta dirachhawks, disna wagyutna agunasiatni afnaweta udaya, wagana harata hatwa ekwahewa, disna ekwa." So that is our greeting in my Tuscarora language. And I just introduced myself. I am from a citizen of the Tuscarora Nation, which today our reservation is located in upstate New York. And these are some of the leaders that work in our communities protecting water, doing some of the things that you all have been working on, our chiefs and our clan mothers. And so I bring greetings from our communities to each of you across Vermont and New York from our people. I also mentioned that I'm a member, I was born into the White Bear clan at Tuscarora, and we have clans in our communities. Our society is organized according to clans, which we inherit from our mothers. So I am the clan of my mother, who was a bear. And I live with 3 eels. My wife and my son and daughter are from the eel clan. It is actually our only clan that is a fish. And once inhabited many of the waters that you all live on today and are working to protect. I wanted to share a little bit about water, and specifically in celebration of today. And thank you for putting together all those great projects. Thank you for your advocacy on behalf of the salmon and on behalf of those macroinvertebrates that some of you have been looking at in the streams. Our world actually began with water. And in our creation story, we talk about a woman who fell from a world where there were human being-like spirit people who lived in the sky world. And this is a painting drawn by one of our elders back in the 1930s, depicting that moment in time when the world was covered with water. And it was many of these animals that actually helped us to begin a life on the earth. Many of the animals you see live in water, including the great turtle who rose up from the waters to provide a home for this woman falling from a different world. And it was actually the muskrat of all of the water animals who was able to bring soil to the back of that turtle for us to dance on, to live on, to work on, and to play on. These are forms of life that we still continue to interact with in Haudenosaunee country. And this is a picture of my son, Oguaho, one of the eels that I live with, ice fishing and catching a beautiful northern pike this time of year. I took this photo a few weeks ago, but just to remember, there is a different relationship many Indigenous people have with water, and it really involves a culture of gratitude, a culture of thanksgiving. And this time of year, we are celebrating a very special season that's also happening in the woods near you, in the trees of your backyards and the schoolyards where you're gathered today across Vermont and New York. And that is our very, very special season of the maple. And every year we give thanks for the maple, and this is my son and daughter partaking in the drinking of that sap, which is what we actually give thanks for. And so we know that the life of trees requires water. We can taste that every year. And if you have not taken a nice cold gulp of maple sap in the woods, I encourage you, if you ever have that opportunity, to feel that water that's coursing through the veins of Mother Earth enter your own system and become part of the water that's inside of you. This culture of Thanksgiving, the season of the trees of which we are now in, the maple being the leader, makes up something that is sort of like, you would say, I think Dr. Kimmerer writes about this in her book, it's sort of our Pledge of Allegiance in a way. It is our commitment to give thanks for all of these elements on earth that are gifts and have their own duties and responsibilities. And so when we think about water, we think about its responsibility to freeze in places where we all live, right? We think about its responsibility to provide oxygen to the fish, to those salmon you all are working and helping to raise. We think about its coolness and its quenching thirst. These are the things that our ancestors and my own family taught me to give thanks for. And so every day, in many of our communities, folks go through this ritual, you might say, to get up and to give a great Thanksgiving, to give a great and humongous thanks to each of the things that sustain us and to remind us of our commitment to allow these wonderful gifts to fulfill their own responsibilities. It is quite lengthy, and had we been in person in a little more time, I would be able to recite this protocol, which is called Ganahara Dechra. But I wanted to share just briefly the section on water, loosely translated into English. And you will notice in the second sentence, the second thought of this Thanksgiving talks about water is life, right? So this is actually a very, very old tradition. These words that are put together by our speakers today are thousands of years old. And I think it's quite relevant and quite significant today on World Water Day that we talk about the fact that Haudenosaunee people, our ancestors have been saying water is life for thousands of years in the recitation of this address. We know these waters. We are familiar with them. We understand their place in our lives, right? Like you would a relative, like you would another form of life. Waters have their own duties and responsibilities. And in this area, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor or not, but this small little lake here for the Haudenosaunee people is where this all began. Today it's called Onondaga Lake, and that is where I am calling in from today, is on Onondaga territory, on this small lake next to one of the largest inland lakes in New York. And should I say, completely within New York borders, Oneida Lake. Realizing how large and how vast and how beautiful Lake Champlain is. We have our own names for these places. Some of them still exist. Some of them do not. In fact, we have our own name, Ganaheta for Onondaga Lake, Onyataoga for Oneida Lake, the Ganyatgahaga for the Mohawk River. We have our own names and histories and stories associated with these waters, some of which you all continue to build your own relationships with. In 2013, I was able to be part of a journey that reestablished, restored my relationship with water as a place of travel, as a canoe route, and joined with hundreds of other folks and paddled from Onondaga Lake, where I sit today, to the ocean in celebration of a treaty that we have with many of your ancestors, and a treaty that we continue to refer to as the River of Life. In fact, this treaty, this wampum belt that we have, actually depicts a large river of life with two vessels traveling together in support of each other, in friendship and in trust with each other, sharing the river of life. And I wanted to share one of our oldest treaties in North America called Goswenta, the Turo Wampum Treaty of 1613. And so in 2013, I was able to travel down this river of life, the Hudson River, and this is a quick photograph I snapped in one of the most scary canoe rides I've ever taken, crossing from Manhattan and into the ocean. And a wonderful celebration of water, a wonderful commitment to protect the lands and wetlands and trees and forests and eels that are all part of our waters. And this is us at the end. A young high school student accompanied me the entire way. And it took about 28 days from beginning to end. And here we are at the Atlantic Ocean, celebrating the river of life. These rivers are often celebrated and often protected. And I wanted to acknowledge the great work that is going on today to prevent a pipeline from moving across sacred, sovereign territory of Indigenous people in the upper Mississippi Basin, where folks are gathering to celebrate and to try to protect the water. And one of those leaders we acknowledge and have worked with over time, Winona LaDuke, is seen here against a backdrop of protecting the water, along with a sort of famous actress and activist you might have heard of, Jane Fonda, on your left here, who joined the protest against Line 3. These protests, of course, are often met with resistance to accomplish the business at hand. And I was so happy to hear somebody mention our collective efforts of the many Haudenosaunee people who traveled out to Standing Rock to protect the rivers, the Cannonball River, the upper basins of many of these rivers, in seeking to act on their behalf. This is part of the work we do at the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment here at ESF. And so in my career, I've been able to work with many of you and to think about matters in this way, to think about them as a collective thought together. And I think this is an appropriate way to end the presentation, to acknowledge that we are coming together today to bring our minds, as Tom Porter has said to our people, to stack them on top of each other so that they send a message that we have a collective acknowledgement that water is life, that water has its own duties and obligations, and our job is to make sure that water can fulfill those, fulfill its own responsibilities. And so I just would say, una jakwa di guerra. That's how we would typically end the Thanksgiving address. And I'm so happy to share this with you all today.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you for taking time to be with us today and for sharing your perspective and sharing your language and your knowledge. I think we're going to take some questions and answers. So if you have some questions for Neil, feel free to put them into the chat. We'd love to hear them. I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth and Stephanie, who will help collect the questions for you, Neil.
Thank you so much, Neil. It makes us happy to be one with you and the water there. Students, teachers, bring it. We have so many exciting things to think about and new words to talk about and new ideas. What questions can we answer for you? Just put them in the question and answer feature if you have questions, and we'll share them with Neil. Neil, do you have any questions for our students?
Oh, I have so many. To hear of the work and efforts in thinking about local waterways. I have worked with students in many of classrooms around Haudenosaunee territory, looking at macroinvertebrates and sampling for fish communities in small streams. And I'm just sort of wondering what the students enjoyed the most in terms of getting outside and interacting with water.
If people want to throw some response into the chat, we would love to share that with Neil, what you like the most about this and how you celebrate the water at home or in your classrooms or with your families. What is it that you're looking forward to? We do have a couple questions in the chat. Elizabeth asks us, how did your language get written down? The characters are put together in such beautiful and, to my eye, unusual ways.
That's a great question. We have our own alphabet. We have a way now to express these sounds that are part of our language. And I would say back in the 1960s, so few people were left that spoke the language that our communities worked with linguists, people who study language, to write our language down. And today we have a wonderful dictionary, which gets us part of the way, but really it's about the spoken word. As you mentioned, this was a language that was never written down for thousands of years, spoken here on Turtle Island. So that's a great question.
Thank you for that.
Hi, thank you. It's Stephanie Larkin, and I thank you for your presentation. I still can't really believe that image with a canoe with Manhattan in the background. It's a little crazy for me to even contemplate that. But we have a question from somebody else who was wondering, what was your favorite part of that canoe journey?
Well, I can say it was not when I snapped that picture. because I think the Staten Island ferry was coming at us at a pretty decent clip. And so there were lots of big waves, and I was hearing tales about bull sharks before we left, so it was a little scary. But my favorite part was definitely pieces of the Mohawk River, Gunyakahaga. Just some of the history that Mohawk Gunyakahaga people have with that place, and sharing with elders about the stories of those places was by far the best part of the journey.
Thank you for that. It was lots to see along the way and experience along the way. We have another question from Aziza, who asks, what are ways we can become water protectors?
Well, it sounds like some of you already are water protectors. You know, in some ways, the stories you share with your family and friends about the work you're doing in your community, and the knowledge that you have been gaining through this program to understand where a drop of water ends up. If you drop it outside of your house, outside of your school, to think about your watershed from source to destination, right? And to think about all of the diverse life that it only exists in water, and their dependence on water is a great way to really raise your consciousness to be able to become a water protector. I think that's a really important step. So some of you are well along that journey. You certainly can continue your advocacy in politics and write to your senators and Congress people, folks that represent you in government, and insist that they protect the waters, that they clean up the waters, right? We have a lot of messes to clean up, and like most of you know, before you make a new mess, you clean up the old one. And so that's an important part of being a water protector too.
Neil, thank you so much. Carrie and Ashley, I'm going to ask you to keep me on track. If there aren't more questions, we don't have more questions in the question and answer, but I have so many for you, Neil. We could take all day, but I think that we have some other things to do today. So maybe, are we ready to move on?
Yeah, and I'll just ask Lindsay, I know that we have Miss Wellingford's class is joining us from Keene on YouTube. And so I'm just curious, Lindsay, have any questions come in through the YouTube chat that we need to answer?
There are no questions that are in the YouTube chat, but let's use this opportunity to call out our YouTube audience and say hello and welcome. I'm so happy that you all are here. So if you do have questions that you would like our presenter, Neil Patterson Jr., to answer, please type them away in the chat. We are monitoring it, and thanks for being here.
I guess I would open it also up to the CBEI partners. If any of the CBEI partners have questions for Neil, now's a great time.
Hi, this is Colleen Neal, and I was curious. The students know that we have sturgeon in Lake Champlain, and they're very important historically. And I was wondering if you have ever seen a sturgeon and what they might mean to Indigenous people.
Oh, we could spend another 20 minutes just on sturgeon for sure. One of my favorite fish. I have seen them. There's a population in the Niagara River that has never been stocked, and so it's an old remnant sturgeon population there that my ancestors grew up spearing, and so I grew up with stories of sturgeon in our community, but I've only recently begun to partake in that. The populations were in such decline for the last 50 years or so. And I just want to share a quick story about sturgeon. because we're coming up on the season of sturgeon. And the reason I know that is that our word in Tuscarora for dandelion, those little yellow flowers that will soon pop up in many of your schoolyards and homes, is the same word for sturgeon. And so when we see that blossom, when we see that yellow flower emerge, what we are telling each other is now it is the time to harvest sturgeon. And so it's one of the things that, I heard as a kid, your age, and to think about then the relationship between this plant and this fish is very fascinating from a scientific point of view. And there's a lot of interest here where I work today at the College of Environmental Science and Forestry about whether, not so much whether this knowledge is true, but to consider how we can work together between scientific knowledge and traditional knowledge of the sturgeon. So I always try to share that, by the way, the name is Gara. That's how we say sturgeon, Gara. And so that's the same thing we say when we see a dandelion, Gara.
Neil, that is so fun to learn a new word. Would you put that word in the chat for us so we can remember that word?
Sure. It's, again, we have characters that are a little bit different so it's hard to type it in whatever.
With the limitations of the English alphabet.
Yeah. But
totally understand that.
I guess that's the way you would say it, but it's not, they're not.
Okay,
they're not the
might
Long
not have gone
Island
to-
A's. They're not the Long Island A's, so it's not Gada, it's Gara.
It looks like that might have gone to one of the panelists, maybe not all the attendees.
Oh.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you. I think that, like I said, Carrie, Ashley, keep me honest. We have some more things to do. I have a few more questions, and thank you for that, Neil. Now we see it. Great. Any other questions from the CBI partners? No? Great. I'm wondering, Neil, if you are familiar with Josephine, I hope I pronounced her name correctly, Mandamin, who is the water walker from the Great Lakes region. And if you have done anything with her, could talk about that effort at all, or maybe tell the audience a little bit more about it.
I don't know too much. I do know that she came through our communities, especially on the northern side of Lake Ontario. So on what is called the Canadian side today, but it's where many of our communities are still located. And I think she was really part of a larger group of grandmothers who began this movement to raise awareness about the fragility, the fragile nature of our Great Lakes. So yes, another form of work that Josephine is putting in.
Your canoe trip reminded me of her because I know very little about her, but what she did was walk around all of the Great Lakes as a very elderly woman. And she invited school children to walk with her around all of the Great Lakes. So that's something that inspired me, and I was reminded of it by your canoe trip. So thank you.
Neil, we have one more question from Champlain Elementary School. They're wondering if you are a believer in our Lake Champlain creature named Champ, if you're familiar with Champy.
Well, I would say from what I know, Champy lives in your heart, right? To think about it that way, and to think about you being in a small birch bark, 8-foot long canoe, and seeing a 12 or 14-foot sturgeon surface next to you, you might believe a little bit more in Champi.
That's great. Thanks so much. I saw that question come in from Champlain Elementary, and I was waiting to hear your response. I was curious about that. So thanks so much, Neil. This is really, thanks so much for sharing with us and connecting with us today. We so value your time and your expertise. And the next thing on our list that we're going to move to is awards, which I know for our students, I'm sure you are dying to know what you are getting for your awesome submission. So I'll turn it over to Colleen, and Colleen is going to talk us through awards.
Okay, great, everyone. Thank you so much, Neil. And I wanted folks to know that you spoke of the Indigenous Thanksgiving, and one of the new grants we just awarded is going to Blue Seed Studio up in Saranac Lake, New York. And they are working with members of the Mohawk Nation as far out as 6 nations and up across the Quebec border as well. And there will be some beautiful artwork produced in the next year. And that will be shared in Middlebury and in Plattsburgh and in Saranac Lake, and one stop north of the border if we can get up there with COVID. So thank you very much. We have a number of projects here in the Champlain Valley, students that are interested in Indigenous work, and we'd be happy to chat with your teachers about those so we can share some more resources. But let's get to the awards. You know, we didn't talk about the breadth of the work that you covered. Ashley and I hit upon it a little bit. But your entries covered, you had like 16 entries covering 16 topics. Why the champs love Lake Champlain's map? What about the ocean commotion and a pollution problem, and access to clean water videos? And some of you from Keene Central looked at water for the South Sudan and what you can do about it. And another video, PSA looked at Charity Water Organization, which is raising money worldwide for water issues. So many people in need don't have access to clean water, and we're so graced with it here in the Champlain Valley. So you covered this breadth of issues. It's really exciting. I encourage people not just to look at your own online, but look at the other classes too, because you all did great work. Camel's Hump, for example, let's start with them. They created this fantastic, beautiful rain garden on school property, and it was designed to reduce the water and snow melt that came from their school before it flowed to a stream, and they were trying to capture that pollution. You can imagine that created a lot of coordination during the time of COVID, but what they're going to do next is study the birds that come to that garden and to their school grounds. We're awarding Camel's Hump Middle School with a classroom backpack filled with a pair of binoculars, several birding guides, and you know, even though I love science and Ashley loves science, and so does everyone else on this screen, not everyone loves science. So there will also be an artistic component to that backpack. So somebody may love art more, and you'll be able to share in that process of learning about birds as well. So kudos to Camel's Hump. Let's go on to Hunt Middle School. Hunt Middle School, their class has been studying engineering and how to create green stormwater infrastructure. One of their end products this spring, will be to create a rain barrel on school property. So they're going to work with the facilities team from the school. And again, their goal is to capture that rainwater this spring before it flows down the street to Lake Champlain with pollution. And instead, they'll be able to use that water right on site. Well, what do you know? Schools have tight budgets, and they could use a little help in creating that rain barrel. So they are getting a gift certificate to Ace Hardware, so they can buy the paint and they can make it colorful, and they can buy their gutters and all the fixings that need to make that happen. So congratulations, Hunt Middle School, for learning about engineering ways to solve our problems. Let's go over to Boquet Valley. You know, Erica's class, Miss Laura's class, has been very involved in the salmon and the classroom program. with our friends from Trout Unlimited. And they're right over there in Westport, near the lake and near the mountains. And we know that as soon as they can, they're going to be out in the field exploring. They also work, I believe, with Ashley and Nate, perhaps, in collecting macroinvertebrates and monitoring the streams. So you too are getting a field trip backpack. So you will get several guides about fish and wildflowers and butterflies and pond life and binoculars to scope out the birds as well. So congratulations, Bouquet. And you are one of the schools that have been involved in our diving in video series. So you can go online and check that out as well. Let's move on to Keene Central. So Keene Central, you've been in this program for a long time. You've received many awards of different types, but you have 3 classrooms participating this year. So we wanted to give you a group prize. And the best way that we could figure out how to do that is you too have been out exploring the fields and streams. And maybe this year it's more about exploring your backyards on your days when you're based out of your house. But you are going to get a prize for the school, and it's called a Dino-Light. And it's a really cool microscope that can be, the images can be portrayed up on your computer screens. You can see things that are really magnified, so you'll be able to bring in small things you might find in your yards at home and have them checked out in the school itself. So congratulations, Keene Central. We think you're going to put that to really good use. And then last but not least, let's move over to Champlain Elementary. Champlain, you had so many classes and we couldn't send speakers into you and we couldn't send you anywhere. We got you a Dino-Light as well. So you can share that with all the classrooms in the school. And Ashley has told us a couple of cool things that she likes to use with her Dino-Light. And we're going to send you some extra products so you can be ready to go and explore a lot of things, do a lot of observation under that scope. But Champlain Elementary, because you had all your classrooms participating, you get one of our favorite prizes. And because you have 330 people who were involved with your teachers and your students, you get a popsicle party. Coming into April vacation, your principal thought that would be a good way to do it. So congratulations. Everybody gets them from kindergarten right up through your graduating class. So congratulations, everyone. We're so proud of you. We are so glad that you are the next stewards of Lake Champlain. You're caring about it. You're planting trees. You're stopping the rainwater. You're just doing a fabulous job. And we really want you to keep it up. So yay, good job, everyone. Good job. So Ashley, we'll send it back to you.
Yeah, and Carrie's going to do a quick shout out for us.
Yeah, our event today has been put on not only by the Champlain Basin Education Initiative, but also by the Vermont Education, and that should say Environment Network. We're all about lots of education in this network, but also the environment. And so we just wanted to let you all know that our next webinar is going to be on April 15th from 4 to 5. And this is for teachers talking about teaching outside. So whether you're an outdoor teacher or whether you're a classroom teacher or whether you're doing a bit of both, we'd like to encourage you to join us at this time to share some of your resources, bring some of your insights, bring some of your questions. So this will be a great time for folks to just have a conversation and get to round up all of those resources to share and get to put your questions out there to a really knowledgeable group of other educators. So we hope you can join us. We will put the registration link in the chat and we hope to see all you educators there on April 15th. Got a couple other announcements.
Oh, yep. Sorry, Carrie, were you going to do those?
I could, but if somebody else is queued up to talk about Watershed Matters, that'd be great. Is that anybody?
Happy to. So we will put a link in the chat box. You'll see that I put a couple links. One of the links wasn't working, but it now is to the virtual gallery. And so check that out. And then that's hosted on our Watershed Matters page, where you can find tons of information about this group of partners and the work that we're doing related to watershed science and literacy and outdoor recreation. And all of our contacts for the folks here are on that page too, so you can reach out to us. Thanks so much for attending today. We hope you had an awesome time. We are so psyched to hear we'll be psyched to hear what we're going to do with some of those prizes and see some of the results. So thanks for joining us. Colleen, I don't know if you want to do a thank you to and maybe a shout out to World Water Day 2022. It's going to be a big one.
That's right. Next year, the week of March 22nd, in addition to celebrating World Water Day, 2022 is the 50th anniversary of the EPA Clean Water Act. So you will see a number of different programs all around the watershed next year about that. We have 50 years to be thankful for everybody's efforts, including your towns and cities, for how much we're paying and how many volunteers are working really hard and how many students are learning about the watershed so that they can be the next stewards. You really are. It really is your job now. So if you're listening, you're all old enough to help the Lake Champlain watershed. We really wanted to thank you. We really want to thank our teaching partners that we introduced in the beginning for CBEI. We love your teachers and we want them to continue working with us. We really want to thank Neil Patterson for his time today in helping us learn more about Indigenous people and how important clean water is to them. And I really want to thank the students from Keene Central as well for getting us all to think more broadly that it's not just here in the Champlain Basin where we have water quality issues, it's all across the world. And there are things that we can do. So keep up the good work, everyone. And thanks again for celebrating World Water Day with us. Yay!
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.